Every year, over a period of 3 months, 20% of Nigeria's farmland gets flooded to the point where its farm workers and millions of people around the Sahel, sub-Saharan region are at the point of starvation. Every single year. Now, considering how important agriculture is worldwide, why is it that tech companies around the world, and specifically in Africa, aren't investing more time and resources to alleviate this specific problem? I'm Dr. Polanco, and this is our first episode of a new series called Marula Bites, and this is a bunch of commentaries on the trending news affecting the daily lives of Africans worldwide. So this week, news outlets sounded the alarm on the Sahel, or sub-Saharan region, with the risk of high rainfall resulting to floods, with the periodic flooding, but more importantly, loss of life, and more so from a global perspective, loss of crop and livestock, to the point of some of these regions, including Mali, Chad, Nigeria, Niger, could be bringing some of its people to the brink of starvation. News outlets like Al Jazeera or Reuters clearly indicated people have already died in the beginning of this specific season of rainfall that could essentially result in multiple lives being lost. A recent research in 2023 investigating the impact of floods on agricultural dependent livelihoods gave some startling revelations that some of it might be apparent to you, but fundamentally gave us a dependency or a cyclic dependency on a specific factors that are essentially unresolved till this day, which has been happening for the last 40 to 50 years. So essentially the influence of floods on the fundamental change in people's livelihoods and loss of life can be divided into a couple of themes. Number one, the influence of small farms on the global food production. Globally, approximately 2.5 billion people, 60% of which live in developing countries, depend solely on agriculture. Agriculture generates over half of its production purely on small farms. Number two, the severity of extreme climate. Floods account for 44% of all natural disasters worldwide. Floods at the top of the list of all natural disasters when it comes to economic impact around the world. Number three, the risk of small farms due to extreme conditions. In the event of extreme weather conditions, small farms usually adopt low-tech technologies such as migration or even relocation, usually followed by a gift-dependent economy whereby they depend on the government or even aid of international institutions like UNESCO and WWF. And that is essentially a byproduct of completely dilapidated risk management or risk disaster institutions in most of those countries, causing this specific way of life. Number four, the impact of health and sanitation. The threat of disease outbreaks is elevated throughout the rainy season. Backflow of drains mixes up with floodwaters, becomes trapped in open areas, and inundations recede. Now, these stagnant pools, as we've seen in many of these videos, often becomes the breeding ground for malaria, for insects of all kinds, carrying all sorts of diseases, and increases the overall death count due to the initial flood itself. This exposes the drinking water to contaminated water and eventually brings about even a water scarcity, drinkable water scarcity, even during a flood. See, the above themes essentially creates what we call a systemic problem, a problem that essentially has all sorts of feedback loops when we come to, if you think about system thinking theory, and there are couple of dependencies that I think is worth mentioning regarding the story. Poor preventative measures and extreme climate causes floods, which affects soil degradation and soil erosion. This in turn reduces crop yields, livestock losses, and increases food security. Now, all of this results in increased poverty, migration, moving out of the area, and limited adaptive capacity. And this essentially reduces the overall preventative measures, which in turn increases the sensitivity to extreme climate, and the cycle repeats itself. Unless these feedback loops are broken, these types of news will continue to show themselves over and over again. The very nature of what an African looks like in its poverty, full-blown in its garment of lack of garment, will prevail the news of the narrative of the African continent. So what is the solution for these types of problems, specifically in the Sahel region? I have seen a video where in Bangladesh, which is also suffering from extreme weather conditions, specifically when it comes to monsoon season and high rainfall, have adopted floating farms, whereby the ability for the farms to rise and fall with respect to the water level. And that has consistently produced some really positive results regarding adapting to climate change and to extreme weather conditions when they happen. But how can tech also alleviate this poverty? The pressure on the poverty line when it comes to forced migration due to loss of food production and the scarcity of food and water when it comes to extreme conditions. These are the type of questions that I would like us to discuss in the comments below. So thank you again for watching. If you're more interested on these types of videos whereby you can get to understand a bit more about a specific tech champions that we interviewed on MoloMolo African Tech Stories podcast, you can click right here and you'll be able to see and get inspired about how some people in the world are trying to change the narrative through drone technology when it comes to these specific types of drone disasters. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Bye.